Welcome back to Roots and Roasts, your go-to source for expert indoor plant care and coffee culture. Today, we're going deep into one of the most overlooked but absolutely critical aspects of plant health: soil selection. The right soil does more than hold your plant in place. It determines how well your plant breathes, feeds, and drains. Let's get started with the essentials. Let's begin with the foundation of healthy indoor plant care: the all-purpose potting mix. This is your default, all-around reliable blend. You'll find it bagged and stacked at every nursery, and for good reason. It supports the majority of houseplants, especially the ones considered beginner-friendly, like pothos, snake plants, ZZ plants, spider plants, and peace lilies. So what's inside? A typical high-quality, all-purpose potting mix contains peat moss or cocoa coir, holds moisture and provides a soft, breathable base. Perlite, those white, lightweight granules that keep the soil loose and improve airflow to the roots. Composted bark adds structure and trace nutrients to support steady growth over time. Why this works? The blend strikes that essential balance between retaining moisture and draining freely, which is exactly what most tropical houseplants need indoors. Not too soggy, not too dry. Great for peace lilies, parlor palms, pothos, dracaena, and snake plants if you water lightly. Care adjustments. If you know your environment is humid, or if you tend to water generously, consider adding an extra handful of perlite or pumice to increase drainage and oxygen around the roots. On the flip side, if your home runs dry, especially in winter, you can add more cocoa coir to extend how long the soil stays moist between waterings. Now, if you're repotting today or planning to mix your own blend, this is a good time to pause the video and take notes on ratios by container size. Think of this like baking. Your results will always be more consistent if you measure by volume, not just eyeball. Also, mix your soil in a large bin or tote so you can evenly incorporate all ingredients before potting up. And one more reminder: avoid garden soil indoors. It's dense, poorly draining, and can carry unwanted pests or pathogens. Always choose soil labeled for container or indoor use. This foundational mix gives your plant the structure it needs to root deeply and grow strong. Next, we'll move into the specialty world of cactus and succulent mixes, where drainage is even more critical. Now let's move into one of the most common problem areas for indoor plant parents: soil for succulents and cacti. These plants evolved in desert and semi-arid regions, where water drains through sand and gravel within seconds. When grown indoors, they need a soil mix that replicates that: quick draining, gritty, and low in organic material. Using a standard potting mix, even a high-quality one, is often too dense. It holds water too long, increasing the risk of root rot, bacterial soft rot, and pest outbreaks. So what's in a good cactus and succulent mix? Coarse sand gives that fast-draining desert texture. Perlite or pumice improves aeration and prevents compaction. Small gravel or crushed granite adds structure and mimics mineral-rich native soils. Minimal organic matter, just enough to feed, but not enough to hold excess moisture. Why this works? This mix allows water to pass through immediately, giving roots the brief access they need, and then letting them dry completely, just like in the wild. These are plants that store water in their leaves or stems. They do not want to sit in wet soil. Pro tips: use unglazed terracotta pots with drainage holes. They wick away excess moisture. Elevate pots slightly with pot feet or risers to promote airflow underneath. Water only when the soil is 100% dry. Use your finger or a wooden skewer to check the bottom layer. Now's a good time to pause the video and take notes, especially if you're mixing soil yourself at home. Here's your DIY gritty cactus mix recipe by container size. Optional: add half a cup of activated charcoal to each gallon of mix if you're planting in containers without drainage. It helps reduce bacteria, mold, and odors. This mix isn't just for appearance. It gives your drought-loving plants the exact soil profile they evolved with. Up next, we'll explore how to care for one of the most misunderstood indoor plants, the orchid, and how its soil mix is completely different from anything else. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood and often miscared for houseplants, orchids. Unlike most indoor plants, orchids don't grow in soil in the wild. They're epiphytes, meaning they anchor themselves to trees or rocks and pull moisture from the air and rain, not from dense ground soil. This is especially true for Phalaenopsis orchids, also known as moth orchids, which are the most common type you'll find in homes and stores. If you use a standard potting mix with these plants, you'll suffocate their roots, literally. They need air, not just moisture. A proper orchid mix contains bark chips, usually fir or pine. These provide structure and allow airflow. Perlite or pumice helps keep the mix loose and promotes drainage. Activated charcoal absorbs toxins and keeps the mix fresh. This mix is ultra-airy. It holds some moisture, but lets it flow freely, ensuring roots don't sit in water and can still access oxygen. Orchid roots are unique. They photosynthesize and take in nutrients through a velamen layer. That's why light and airflow are so important. Best used for Phalaenopsis orchids, bromeliads, some air plants, and other tropical epiphytes. Let's pause here and address a common question. Does this orchid mix work for Paphiopedilum or slipper orchids? The answer is not quite. Slipper orchids are semi-terrestrial, meaning they grow closer to the forest floor, often in decomposed leaf matter. They still need a well-aerated mix, but one that holds slightly more moisture. For slipper orchids, adjust your mix. 2 parts fine-grade fir bark, 1 part sphagnum moss or cocoa core, 1 part perlite or pumice. This gives a spongier structure with slightly more water retention, while still preventing compaction. Always pot orchids in clear plastic orchid pots with side slits. This lets light reach the roots and supports airflow. Water deeply until water flows out the bottom, then let the mix dry out slightly before the next watering. Mist daily or place a humidity tray underneath to mimic tropical conditions, especially in winter. For slipper orchids, follow the same volume breakdown, but substitute. Replace half the bark with fine bark or cocoa core. Add sphagnum moss to increase water retention in dry environments. Optional tip: soak orchid bark in water for 4 to 6 hours before using. This prehydrates the mix and prevents moisture shock. Orchids can thrive for years indoors when given the right substrate and humidity. Next, we'll pull all of this together as we explain how soil and container pairings create the perfect root environment for every plant. Now that we've covered the major soil types and their uses, it's time to focus on 2 of the most common but easily preventable issues that derail indoor plant care: poor drainage and soil-borne pests. These are what we call silent killers. They work slowly below the surface but can destroy a healthy plant in weeks if left unchecked. Let's start with drainage. Roots don't just drink water. They also need oxygen to survive. When water can't flow freely through the soil and out of the pot, it collects at the bottom and creates a low-oxygen, anaerobic environment. This leads to root rot, fungal infections, yellowing leaves, and eventually a completely collapsed root system. Poor drainage is also the #1 cause of fungus gnat infestations. These small black gnats lay their eggs in wet soil. When the top layer stays damp for too long, you're unintentionally building a nursery for pests. Even sterile soil can attract pests if conditions become too moist or stale. Here are the most common culprits. Fungus gnats thrive in constantly damp soil. Soil mites, usually harmless, but may signal decay or excess organics. Mealybugs and spider mites show up when plants are stressed or soil dries out too fast without humidity balance. How to prevent soil-borne pests? Use sterile, indoor-specific potting mixes. Store in used soil in sealed container. Let the top inch of soil dry out completely between waterings. This breaks the life cycle of fungus gnats and discourages surface mold. Bottom water your plants occasionally. This helps hydrate roots while keeping the top layer drier and less appealing to pests. You can have the perfect soil recipe, but if your container and drainage setup don't support it, your plant will struggle long-term. By combining the right soil structure, container type, and watering routine, you're setting up your plant for consistent health from the root system up. In our next section, we'll look at how soil and pot combinations work together to form the ultimate root environment, tailored by plant type. Choosing the right soil isn't just about what bag is on sale. It's about setting your plants up to thrive. From houseplants to orchids to succulents, what you pot them in truly matters. If you found this guide helpful, make sure to subscribe to Roots and Roasts for more plant care insights, coffee culture, and expert tips every week. And if you're ready to learn more, check out our video on how to repot houseplants the right way, linked right here on screen. See you in the next one.